It's setting up. Now I've got it. It's my first time live broadcasting on YouTube, so I've got it on both sides. Yes, there we are. It's setting up. I've got it. It's my first time live broadcasting on YouTube, so I've got it on both sides. Yes, there we are.
It says I can copy streaming links, so if you want, I could pop it. I could even. Can I post that on my social media now? Does that work or not?
There you go. I managed. I cut the feed. Okay. There we are. That way. You want me to send you the?
Well, I think I've got the link. I've just managed to copy and paste it myself. So I'm just going to pop it in. I'm going to post that now on Facebook. So I might get a few people coming in on that. If that's okay with you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I've got our video on one side and the chat on the other, so we can answer questions.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Fantastic.
I think it's posted.
I could do the same, actually. I'll post it as well.
Copycat.
There we are. So, we're live with Glenn. It's a pleasure. I mean, I'm sure you read my post. I'm sure you could tell. I fondly remember our first meeting in Minsk. It's a shame we can't travel anymore, but that was a great conference in Minsk.
It was very well organized.
Yes.
I did enjoy it. It was very nice, meeting you. I remember we sat down, had breakfast together in our hotel. And of course we went on a little walk. I took you on a little walking tour of Minsk, which was great. It's a great city, Minsk. And I'd love to go back there sometime. Once the pandemic is over, should we say? Yes.
Fingers crossed, soon to come. Yeah, definitely. It would be nice to revisit Minsk. I have to say, I'm very curious about Poland as well, because, well, I've actually had students here in St. Petersburg, Russia from Poland, so I was already a bit curious. But that's also something that I found very interesting in our first meeting, because I used to, my partner and I, Tom, we set up a small language center, here in St. Petersburg, Russia. And I often used to think that, well, big chains were a bit like kind of the McDonald's of English education, and we're kind of, the little family local restaurant. And the way you talked from the start, the way you talked about International House, I was very impressed. Since then, I've done the conference, Your Teacher Training Day. The enthusiasm of International House teachers was honestly contagious. It's very impressive. So just as an introduction, because unfortunately I still can't travel and visit, but what makes International House special to you?
Well, I mean, I've been teaching for over 18 years, 10 years of that actually at International House. And before I moved to International House Turin, I was teaching at a private language school here in Turin. I've been teaching for 6-7 years, got my Delta, and continued to teach at this private language school. And I kind of, it was a lovely school, family-run business, but I kind of felt like I was stuck in a rut because I had the Delta, but I couldn't really progress on up the ladder. And so I went to, well, I originally applied to be the DOS at International House Bydgoszcz many years ago, but they went with somebody who had already had experience in International House. And so, right, they should. And they said, well, look, there is a vacancy available at International House Turin as a senior teacher. And we strongly consider that, we strongly recommend that you should consider this vacancy. So I did. And I became a senior teacher here at International House Turin. And in those 3 years, I learned more. Even though I had the Delta, I learned more in those 3 years. I felt I progressed and developed as a teacher more than I did in the previous 6-7 years at another language school. So I think that's testimony to International House. And then I certainly did progress up the ladder, because after 3 years being a senior teacher, I was basically promoted to be the director of studies, and that's exactly the position I wanted in the first place. So it kind of made sense to become the director of studies of a school where I was already working at, and it was much easier to sort of transition into that position as DOS than it would have been if I had started at another school, let's say 3 years before, without any experience of that school. So in a way, I'm glad I didn't get that job at International House Bydgoszcz. I'm glad I had those 3 years as a senior teacher here first. It really, really helped and developed. So yeah, being part of International House, I like how you compare it to a franchise. I mean, to McDonald's, because technically it is a franchise. Well, it's an affiliation, so every school is a bit different. And you say it's like a big corporation. Well, yes and no, because each school has its own identity, and each school is run by its own director, and they basically buy into International House. And so, we have, similar standards in every school. Inspectors go around and inspect the schools and make sure they are a high standard. I myself am actually an inspector myself. I go around schools and making sure that, they do provide a very good quality of school. But the actual school itself can be very, very different. Some schools are very modern, some a little bit older, some are very large, some are smaller. It's very much different. So it's not like McDonald's where everything looks the same. But I do like to think that we do provide a very good standard of education, English teaching, and certainly becoming a DOS for an international school very much opened doors. I feel, I don't think I would be organizing a conference with the likes of Scott Thornbury or Jill Hadfield if I hadn't been working for International House, put it that way.
Oh, for sure. No, I was definitely proven wrong. I mean, that was my conception, and it was kind of my way to try to defend our project. And yes, it's the right way, a small language center. But yes, International House, you really changed my my take on that. I am curious to come and visit for sure.
Well, once we have another face-to-face conference, everyone's welcome to come here. Turin itself is a beautiful city on the banks of the River Vistula. It's famous for being the birthplace of Nicholas Copernicus, and also for its chocolate gingerbread, which is very tasty. So I do recommend coming to Turin. But then, of course, you do live in probably the most beautiful city in Russia. Not that I've never been there myself, but I've heard great things about St. Petersburg. So
it's pretty amazing.
You live in a great city in a way.
No, for sure. And yes, so International House offered you a lot of career development opportunities, basically, yes?
Yes, very much so. Yeah. As I said earlier, I feel like it really did open the doors, and certainly I myself progressed up the career ladder. And this is what I really sort of, recommend my teachers when they come and start. The sort of teachers I'm looking for to work here are those who are not on a busman's holiday. They're not traveling around on a gap year, just teaching English for the sake of traveling. These are people, these are teachers who see teaching English as their career, and they want to develop and progress. And so I do, I mean, it's quite a small school. I have about 15 teachers, and they're all at different points in their career development. But the one thing they do have in common is that they all do want to develop and improve as teachers.
And they want to be in the profession. I think it's a very fair point. We struggled with that as well. Yes, there are people who teach English just as a kind of a way to kind of finance their exploring of the world, their world tour.
Yeah, absolutely. They're just getting around the world, and then, well, maybe not so easy now with the pandemic, but certainly, but pre-pandemic, it was a way to travel around the world. And why not? Fine, that's what they want. But I find a lot of these people, their heart wasn't really in it, and then there are those who do see it as a career. I mean, I've met people in the past who say, or who have been an English language teacher, and they're like, oh, I want to become a proper teacher, and that offends me because for me, an English language teacher is a proper teacher. We are, it's a professional career, and we are teaching English as a foreign language. That is a profession. It's not the fact, we're not proper teachers, if you know what I mean. And I think, the reason why this person said that, I think it's because there are people who are out there who don't see it as a proper career. They literally just see it as a means of traveling around the world.
So already we have Glenn, as a director of studies, already giving great tips for any teachers interested in looking for a new job, for job interviews. Any questions you might have for Glenn on that kind of thing, feel free to type in the chat on YouTube. Yeah, that's very interesting. I agree on that point. It is a job. It's a vocation. It's a profession, and it's probably the way I as I see it, as I understand it at International House. What a school like that can provide is the support you need to be able to develop, because currently there are different ways to develop as a teacher in terms of, well, career-wise, and there are quite a lot of teachers that go towards the freelance aspect of things. I think financially, probably it's the best decision. It makes sense that if you're going to take care of your own business, it's going to bring in more financially. But working in a place like International House, I guess there's a lot more teacher support.
Absolutely, yeah. Great being, freelance, and I think it does, generate financial rewards depending on which country you're working in. But unless you have that autonomy to self-develop and research on the internet and do courses yourself, you're not going to develop. And on paper, yes, I've had people who've applied for positions here. On paper, it says 15, 20 years teaching experience. But what does that actually mean? They may be teaching the same level, the same book again and again and again. They get very much set in their own ways and they don't develop. Whereas working at a school where there's a network of support, it really, really does help. I'll give you an example. March 2020, we know that month very, very well, when the pandemic first hit, at least in Europe. And we literally had 24 hours to transit from face-to-face lessons to online lessons, 24 hours. And I really felt sorry for those individual private language schools that didn't have the support. Being part of International House was and is amazing, purely because in this example, we've got schools in Italy. There's lots of International House schools in Italy, and they had been through this, several weeks beforehand. And so they'd already been teaching online, up to that point for at least 2 to 3 weeks. And so they knew the basics. They knew Zoom. I mean, before then, I hadn't even heard of Zoom before. And I was expected to train, my teachers to teach the next day. And it was very much like the blind leading the blind. But being part of International House was great because you had that support network. I was able to liaise with the director of studies, the academic management team at all the different schools in Italy. They gave me a lot of support, and it was like that. And then I was able to give lots of support once I was, familiar with the situation, to other schools, and it was very much like a chain ball, a snowball effect. It was like a chain reaction. We were helping each other, very much in it together. But I do feel sorry, there were schools out there who were crying out for support, and I did actually do a few sessions on how to show the teachers the basics of how to use Zoom, because people just simply didn't know. Being part of International House, we do have that strong network, and that really, really, really helps.
I totally see what you mean. I remember those months actually as well. In March, April, and June, I think even till May, June, July, all the invitations to some kind of online conference, workshop, event, some kind of thing like that, everybody was asking, Antoine, can you talk about how to teach online?
Yeah.
That was the everybody's main concern. Yeah. Of course, being in a team, it helps.
I found myself, as I said earlier, training teachers on, around the world. I was, I had one person from Nepal, from South America, from India, from lots of different countries. And I found myself, almost like an expert on how to teach, at least the basics, using basics of Zoom, how to teach English online. And yet, I myself had been in their position only a couple of weeks earlier. It was amazing. Really, it was, fast development. I think this year has been an incredible year. Yes, it's been a lot of downs, but I think we should also see it as being a lot of positives as well. We all have developed. Doesn't matter how experienced you are. We have all developed. I think, especially in the realm of teaching English online. My experience of online teaching prior to March had been just a handful of one-to-one students using Skype. I'd never experienced, teaching a whole class, and I would never even considered it myself. I would be like, no, that sounds too ambitious. But it's amazing that when you're thrown in at the deep end, yes, it's amazing how you adapt. And I do see a lot of pros. I mean, of course, it's not perfect, but there are a lot of pros with teaching online, definitely.
For sure. I agree. I find, yes, a lot of negatives about 2020, but on the whole, one of my positives is really how the teaching community supported each other. Because Zoom is there. It's not the only tool, but of course, I think most of us are on Zoom for the breakout rooms. That's great for group teaching, for being able to share your mouse. So you can actually play games on the computer, share the mouse with the students, and they can control what's going on.
It's amazing what you can do. And it's part of the fun as well, is trying to look at what we do usually in a face-to-face lesson and try to adapt it for an online setting as well. I know one of my teachers did a session yesterday about how to conduct monitoring and giving feedback online, because to be honest, monitoring students in breakout rooms is still quite a challenge. Zoom is not designed by English language teachers. I believe it's not designed by teachers, full stop. So, the idea of like going in and monitoring students, it's fine, but you are only literally monitoring 2 or 3 students in that particular room at that particular time. What on earth are the other students doing? And, we have had situations, I'm sure we all have, with teenagers especially, where you're going in there and they're absolutely silent, or they're speaking in Polish, they're not on task. And at the moment you appear in, they're like, yeah, exactly. And I think, a great thing would be if, Zoom redesigned a little bit, their breakout room platform, with the idea that you as a teacher could see the little rectangles of the breakout rooms, literally from, on the screen, so you can see all 6 rooms. You literally just click each room and you can hear immediately what they're saying without having to move from room to room. And one of my teachers has found ways of trying to multitask a bit and do several. He's looked at several ways, but it does involve, I think, at least 2 computers at one time.
Oh.
But there's a new feature now. If you download, upgrade Zoom, students can actually move from breakout room to breakout room themselves. So that is a new feature. So Zoom, I think, is slowly adapting to support English teaching, but there's still a long way to go, I think.
I'm sure they're listening and they're paying attention, because they've noticed that, yes, education has jumped on Zoom. I'm sure we're not the only industry, but they've definitely got room for a special Zoom for education product. I'm sure that's coming.
Yeah.
If not, another company is going to come up with it.
Yeah. And
I remember you mentioned Skype. I remember a few experiences of teaching on Skype. It was not the same thing. I can't imagine teaching a group on Skype.
No. I mean, first of all, there's no breakout rooms. And for me, I did look, back in March, April, I did look at other platforms. But for me, yeah, it's not perfect by any means, but Zoom was the best thing. And for me, it was the breakout rooms. Because you want that in an English language classroom. You want pair work, you want group work. And, you're talking about all this teacher talking time versus student talking time. The natural environment of an online lesson where everybody's focused on you, the teacher, there is going to be a high amount of teacher talking time. It's natural, you know. I'm talking a lot now. Why? Because you are focused on me, you know, so I'm talking a lot. But having breakout rooms, it really helps to give that balance and help to increase the student talk time, providing they are on task and they are talking.
Well, that's a different question, but yes, it works out. It works out. I agree with you. It's necessary to bring back that student focus and them focusing on their own tasks or their projects. They're in their breakout rooms. They have their thing to do. As long as they have a challenge or a goal, they might do it all in their L1. That happens until you pop in and they go, switch back to English quickly.
They need clear goals. They need clear goals and also clear time limits as well. You want to say, okay, guys, you literally got 5 minutes. What I do often is I would, you know, broadcast a quick message, say, okay, 30 seconds, 20 seconds. So they're aware of how long they've got in their breakout room. Kind of keeps them on their toes a bit.
Coming back to being a director of studies in International House, you did say International House, every school is a bit different. How is International House Toron different with you as a director of studies? I mean, like, what kind of?
Well, because I would say we have, all international house schools have a very strong focus on professional development. And they would probably have sessions every couple of weeks, input sessions, inset sessions. We're different in the sense that we have a very big focus on teacher development. And we literally have input sessions most Fridays, on a weekly basis, and obviously organize big events as well, like the teacher training day. I would say, there's probably more emphasis on teacher development here than a lot of schools, but don't get me wrong, most international house schools do have teacher development. And I think the reason being, at least this is interesting, actually, this is kind of pre-COVID. Poland as a whole, as a country, was very much, a training ground for newly qualified teachers. So most of the teachers coming to us, coming to International House Bydgoszcz, straight off the CELTA, most of them, not all, but a lot of them were. However, one positive thing, I suppose, from COVID, don't get me wrong, there's lots of positives having newly qualified teachers because they're fresh off the course and they're very eager, full of ideas. But one thing this year we found is that we were getting a lot of applications from very experienced teachers. And that's the sad thing, is that they were made redundant, or they lost their jobs as a result of COVID, and suddenly there are a lot more. So yes, we are still very much focused on developing and teacher development, but we found this year, we have maybe ever so slightly less than that now, because most of our teachers are experienced. But of course, having said that, we're always still learning. I'm learning. We're all learning.
That's what I love about the conferences. I'm sure you noticed, but yes, I tried to attend as many sessions as I could.
Well, there's something. Sorry to know, our original teacher training day was scheduled for March this year, and because we always organise every year in March, April time, when the weather is just getting warmer, just towards springtime, and it's a great event. It's a lot of fun. The face-to-face event attracts a lot of people from around Europe. And this year we were going to have Scott Thornbury. He was going to come to Toron. He's never been to Toron before. But as you know, literally a few days before, it was a stressful time, because I'd been preparing this conference for a year beforehand, and suddenly, I could see it slowly unraveling and getting destroyed, basically, by something which I had absolutely no power or control with whatsoever. We were liaising with the local health department very closely, so okay, how many people are allowed to attend a conference? And it was like 150, then it went down to 100, and eventually went down to 50. And then, of course, on Saturday, the 14th of March, pretty much the borders closed. In fact, we had a participant coming in from Romania who was one of our former teachers. He was actually at the airport, at Bucharest airport, on the Friday before the conference. And I'm frantically trying to call them saying, don't get on the plane, because the borders were literally closing that early Sunday, that night. And there was no way he could have got into Poland, but there was no way he would get back to Romania. So it was just, a disaster. We had some participants coming in from other countries as well, like Czech Republic and Ukraine, and they also decided to come anyway, and they was actually stuck. They had to walk across the border. So yeah, it basically unraveled, and we couldn't have the conference then. So we decided to postpone it by 8 months. We thought, 8 months, it's gonna be business as normal. Everything's gonna be back to normality. We were wrong, and so we decided to basically follow everybody else and turn the conference into an online event. However, I'm fully aware that a lot of people, myself included, are kind of getting sick and tired of online conferences because there's a lot of them out there. And I've been to a few where the numbers were quite low, and I'm thinking, well, okay, look, I've decided, I've committed myself to this now. We're going to be having an online event. How can I make it that's something a little bit extra special? So I decided to completely rehaul the original program, although there were a few people still presenting, but generally it was a completely revamped program. And yeah, we went with the online one with, and also decided to make it a big marathon event. So like 30.5 hours, with the idea that more people could attend from around the world. And the idea is not that I'm encouraging people to sit at their laptops for over 13 hours, but for the idea that they could come and go as they please. And then the final thing what I decided to do was try and get as many big names like yourself as well in the world of EFL to present. So, we had an amazing lineup, and I can't believe I managed to, put it all together. It worked very well. So, things like this is why, I think, International House generally is a special organization, because, we organize events like this and we're really focused on teacher development.
And the whole organization supports your events, advertises it, and things like that. Because yes, it was. I agree with you. There are way too many, let's say, online events now. It's very difficult to choose from the vast amount of events there are. And so you think that the success of yours was mainly the revamped program and this kind of idea of a marathon that allowed people from different time zones to come in?
I think because, people could choose what they wanted to choose. Also, another thing is that I've noticed a few, our original event would have actually had, I think, 4 or 5 different tracks happening at the same time, different workshops. And so people are limited, aren't they? Because, they probably want to go and see everything, but they can't. And that's partly because of the capacity in our building. We literally couldn't really have any more than 150 people in the building at any one time. And obviously in each room, they're classrooms, so we could only really have like 20 to 30 people each time. So you're limiting the number of participants. Doing it online, not at all. And we decided not to have separate Zoom rooms. We decided to have one room, with one speaker presenting at one time, because I have noticed some conferences having several different rooms happening at the same time. Maybe like a business room, a YL room, and great. But I think I wanted to keep it simple. Also with the technology as well, because the more rooms you have open, the more chances things could go wrong. Yeah. True. So I decided to have it just very, very simple, but over the entire day, and that way people would come and go. Our very first presenter was Jill Hadfield, who's actually based in New Zealand. So even though we started like 8:30 in the morning, that was 8:30 in the evening her time. So we had doing it like this, we had people from all around the world. And the idea was people could come and go. Having said that, I did find out that quite a few participants did stay for the entire event, which I'm surprised. Sure. And obviously myself, I was presenting for the entire day, and it was it was an endurance, should we say that? But I'm thinking, why not do it 24 hours? Let's try the big one. Apparently, Rob Howard, Rob, apparently
of course,
he's organised
24 hours.
He's done a 24-hour event before. It is doable. Why not?
Wow.
I need some adrenaline, I think, for that one.
Yeah, you're gonna need a lot of coffee or something. I don't know. I 24 hours?
Yeah. It's got to be done. Why not? So, anyway, so I wanted to try to do something a little bit different. But obviously, the names we had as well was a huge attraction, and that's why. I mean, we had about 350 people registered, and in the end, we probably peaked at just under 200. But it's difficult to know how many of them, are the same people. So maybe we still had over 300, but they're coming in different times. But it was consistent around 120, 140 people throughout the whole day, which I thought was actually quite a nice turnout. I was very surprised, at 8:30 in the morning that we were already over 120 people in the room watching. So I thought, early morning, I thought people would not be interested in, but that's part of the joy, isn't it, of online conferences and lessons. You can literally roll out of bed, still be in your pajamas, have your cup of coffee, and straight in. This is one of the things that our students like about online lessons.
Yes.
Last year I was teaching advanced students. Some of them had to travel 30, 40 kilometers to the school, and so they really did enjoy the fact that click of a switch, they were in the lesson.
Of course. I would add to the program and the layout. I fully agree with you. I really like the fact that it was just one room. That the program was very good. I would add as well that the charisma, the charm, the enthusiasm of the leader of the day is also very important. I mean, here that's a little compliment to you, but I think it's very important because it does give a flow to the whole event. The short breaks between different speakers, that's where you come in. And I don't know if it's a right analogy. It sounds wrong because it's kind of a circus, but at the circus, you have all these different acts, but you also have...
Are you trying to describe me as a ringmaster? Well, all I need is like, a black top hat and a red.
I think you'd be
I'm
great.
wearing the wrong jacket. I should get a red one. Yeah.
It should be red, yeah.
But no, I think it's like that with any teacher. I think you need
to the whole thing.
Sorry, Antoine.
Sorry, you see what I mean? You also gave a flow to the whole event. It's not just like one speaker, one topic, and I didn't have the feeling that people were coming to listen to their favorite speaker and then just, leave. There's a flow, there's an atmosphere, and yes, there's International House and Glenn there that's leading the whole thing. That as well plays a big role, I think, in the success of an event like that.
Well, thanks. That's very nice to hear that. And I enjoyed it. It was a good fun. I'd love to do it again. Definitely. Why not? But yeah, it was a special event. I was absolutely shattered by the end of it. But and then one thing I thought was missing, because always we have an amazing social event at our real, face-to-face conference, and where we social network and get to know people and stuff, and it's a lot of fun. And I did think about the idea, toyed with my idea, maybe I could run a quiz or something. And I know we had the International House Biesca Biała training day last weekend, which was fantastic. They also had a quiz after, and I thought it would be a great idea, but I decided to go with a 13-hour marathon, and I just did not have any energy whatsoever to run a quiz after. I mean, I did think about it, but I thought, we were finishing like 9:30, 10 at night. That's too late to start a quiz, So I decided not to. So that, for me, that was the one thing missing. But, it swings and roundabouts. There's going to be pros, there's going to be cons, and it was certainly different to what we usually do. And I think, we just have to adapt. We have to embrace the times we're in right now. We have to adapt. Yes, it's not that pleasant, is it? We are pretty much confined to our towns, to our countries. We can't really get out. There's only a few countries now that we can fly to. So yeah, it's not great, but I think we need to try to find some positivity in these dark times, and we just have to adapt and go with the flow, I think.
Agreed, agreed. There's a lot of positive as well. As I said, I find the way everyone's supporting each other. I've even read some very interesting articles about how the ecology is actually quite happy of us all staying put.
Well, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What was the name of that that teenage eco warrior? I've forgotten her name.
Greta Thunberg.
Yes, I'm sure she's very happy, because, the number of planes flying, has reduced considerably. And I
Sure,
think,
sure.
it has actually, a lot of conspiracy theories believe that, they started this to, you never know. I'm joking.
Eco-terrorism or something like that.
No.
Well, we're not going to get
Of course,
into
there's a lot of
that
people
here.
don't believe in coronavirus, but of
I
course,
know.
it's very much there. I've known people.
People don't believe the Earth is flat, so let's not even.
Yeah.
But yes, coming back to those online conferences, you're absolutely right. It's the networking is what's still a bit missing. Now, you mentioned the other International House Teacher Training Day. Christopher did a great job with that.
Yes.
You mentioned Rob as well. There was the IA TEFL BSIG conference. That was about a month ago, I think.
There's also, one of the joys about working for International House, we also have internal conferences as well. And literally just a few weeks ago, we had the IH Young Learners Conference. Now that's usually held at an IH school somewhere in Europe. Last year, it was at IH Belfast. The year before that, I believe it was IH Reggio Calabria in Italy. This year, it was online. And they did, I can't remember the name, was it Remo or something? There's this platform website where in between a few of the talks, so there'll be like maybe 2 or 3 talks, then there'll be like half an hour break where we would leave the Zoom room and go into this other room called, I think it's called Remo, and it very much feels like conference networking. You can see like these little tables, and you can just go and click on each table and go and talk to the people.
Nice.
And they had the publishers table, they had speaker tables. It's quite an interesting, so there are obviously lots of companies and organizations out there doing their best to try to recreate the real conference feel. And that's one of them. I think you do have to pay a bit, it is a premium service. You do have to pay for this website if you are going to be a conference organizer and want to. But I didn't know about that until after my own conference. So maybe that would have been something we could have done after. But
definitely,
it's too late now.
I actually know a Russian team who's developing something like that, an app for phones, where basically when you're in it, you have this virtual area. So it can be like a garden where you're organizing a barbecue, and yes, you click on different areas. When you're not next to anyone, you don't hear them. But when you click on a table, for example, it's a virtual idea of you sitting down, and you start hearing and seeing just the people that are at that table. You don't hear or see the people at the barbecue zone, for example.
I mean, this was literally like a plan of, like you're looking down like a bird's eye view of a conference room with different tables. Now you could see who was sitting at each table. You can, you can see their names. You're like, okay, I don't want to go to this one. I'm going to go to this one, like this. But then once, you click on it, it's very much, it's like a breakout room. So it's kind of a glorified breakout room, but it's the fact that you can see the overview plan of the conference room, which is great. I really enjoy it. I thought that was a good idea to include that.
Agreed. I'm definitely looking forward to that kind of. So you said Remo, yes, it's called?
I think it is. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
If anybody's watching can correct me, but I believe it's Remo or something like this. REMO or something similar.
The Russian one I know is CNNCT. So basically just the consonants for connect.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
That one is free. Like if you're a club organizer, if you own a club or something like that, you can contact them and they'll create a room for your club. Very interesting.
Yeah.
To wrap things up, because it's I like all this about being a director of studies, and we talked about how a team can really help you. A well-organized team, and a team that actually has, as you said, a spirit, a common mission and direction towards professional development. Now, I was curious about, because you mentioned Rob, I mentioned Christopher from the other international house. I did want to ask, actually, to wrap things up, why Poland? Because you're all three of you are great professionals, very dedicated to the craft of education, and I happen to notice that you're all three of you are in Poland. I know that I've told you I do know a bit about Poland because I've had a few students here in Russia from Poland, and I'm already quite fascinated by Poland thanks to them. But I can't help notice that you're a bit like me. You're in a country that doesn't seem the most obvious. You know, if you told someone, yeah, I'm an English teacher and I'm based in Italy, everybody's like, of course, Italy. Everybody dreams of living in Italy. Poland, Russia are not especially the first countries that come to mind. So why are you all in Poland? Why do you think
I've been
so?
here 18 years, and I came here originally because, I heard it was a great country, and it is. The culture is amazing. I believe personally, I mean, Rob will probably argue with me because he lives in Gdansk, but I believe, honestly, I live in the best city in Poland. I mean, it's a great size. It's just over 200,000 people living here in Torrance, so not too big, not too small, sort of like, just sort of like north central city, like go pinpoint right in the middle of Poland and move up a little bit, and we're halfway kind of between the center and Gdansk. We're about 2 hours south of Gdansk. It's a good location, to base yourself here because, yes, the cost of living is a little bit cheaper here than it would be in one of the bigger cities like Warsaw, of course. And yet you can base yourself here. We're only 2 hours from Gdansk, 2 hours from Poznan, 3 hours from Warsaw. So it's a good central location. So that's why I'm in Torun. And every time I cross the bridge across the Vistula and I see the beautiful panorama of Torun, I very much feel like I'm at home here. And I'm like, yeah, this is why I'm here. And it's just a great country. It feels safe here as well. I do, like Poland, in many ways. But, then again, I love traveling, Antoine. I mean, I've been over 50 countries. And so, sometimes I was thinking, why am I living abroad? And then I think, well, it's obvious why you're living abroad, because you love traveling. And that's why I'm not, I mean, okay, I was originally born in New Zealand, but really, theoretically, I'm more British because my mother's British. But, I'm glad I'm living abroad compared to living maybe, back in the UK or something like that, because it's exciting, it's interesting. Yeah. And I would say that's the main reason why I'm here, because it's
So exciting, different. And what speaks to you in the Polish culture? Because I know I fully agree with you. I find, yes, there's a sense of curiosity. I find in the 21st century, I mean, there's so many opportunities to travel and see something different. It kind of it's natural curiosity for me when I even have locals asking me, what are you doing here? Why are you living in Russia? I'm like, well, why not? Look around you. It's a fantastic place to be. And it feeds my curiosity. It's not what I'm used to.
But there's pros and cons with every country, to be honest.
Of course.
And yeah, I have been here 18 years. It's a long time, and I would love to go back and see more of New Zealand. I mean, New Zealand is a great country, and I left New Zealand when I was 2. That's why I haven't got a New Zealand accent. But I was back there 5 or 6 years ago now, and it was great to be back. I love to go again, but of course, New Zealand right now is closed. Yes. So is Australia. I've got a good friend who's Australian, and he's right now in Spain, and he's trying desperately to get back to Australia for Christmas, or to go back there. And he had like he had to book his flights with 3 different airlines 3 times, each time they cancelled it. And eventually he's going back next week on some special flight organized, a repatriation flight organized by the Australian government. Oh. So it just, that shows, how difficult it is to get back, even for somebody who is Australian. They pretty much closed the country, and it's the same in New Zealand. So let's hope, this time, in a year's time, we will, coronavirus will be a thing of the past, we hope, and things will be back to normal. But that's a good point to think about. Yes, we'll be back to normal. There's no more coronavirus. The world has opened up. Will we be losing online lessons? That's the thing, because, there's now a market. There's a market there, and
Sure.
suddenly students have seen, there is, positive things connected with online. They've seen the positives with it, the pros. So who knows? I mean, it's interesting. In September, we started a new academic year, and for 1 month, we were actually doing blended learning classes. So each group comes twice a week, an hour and a half each, twice a week. So 3 hours in a week, 3 clock hours. So one lesson that week was face-to-face. And then 2 days later, it was online, or vice versa. And that was quite interesting. And we did have quite a lot of demand for online lessons. So who knows? Are we just going to go back to face-to-face teaching, or will there now be a demand for online teaching? And I personally think there will be. I think, yes, of course, we will go back to face-to-face lessons. But I think students have seen the positives and the pros with online lessons, and I think
Sure.
There's definitely a future in online teaching. Definitely, very much.
I agree with you. This idea of back to normal, but the question is, what will be the normal? Because the normal always changes.
Yeah.
And sadly, COVID was a serious impact, but at the same time, it changes the normal. We'll see what happens in 2021, but we'll be back to normal, to a kind of normal. We'll figure out what that normal will be.
Well, September was kind of a normal for us. I mean, we adapted again, having these blended learning lessons, online, face-to-face. I kind of liked it, actually. It was really nice. For me, it was quite dynamic, and it made things interesting. You're seeing the students online, and then you see them face-to-face, or vice versa. I thought that was quite interesting. But I think, probably we will go back to face-to-face. Who knows? Who knows? I mean, now there's talk about this vaccine, but that's going to take a lot of time to really, get to spread and stuff. So
we'll see. It's difficult to predict, but I agree with you. I think it's going to be a mix of the two, because there are advantages. Yes, there are pros and cons to each one. And currently, I don't know about you, how cold it gets in Poland, but here in St. Petersburg, it's the beginning of December. So it's getting pretty cold, and it's also getting very dark. We're getting close to that period of the year when we have something like 4 or 5 hours of daytime.
Yeah.
So actually not having to commute to corporate clients or to a school and teaching online, in December, January, February, we like it over here.
Yeah. Well, it's getting pretty cold here as well. We're sort of like about -1, -2. And it did actually snow a few days ago, which was nice. But the snows, it went off a few hours. So,
well, we can still hope for a white Christmas.
Well, it used to be guaranteed. When I first came here, it was guaranteed it was going to be a white Christmas. Now you can't. I mean, the last few winters in Poland have been pretty mild. I think last year it hardly snowed at all. I remember my first winter here was like -20 degrees, blizzards, snow up to your knees, that sort of thing. But who knows? 2020 has been a tough year. It's been a hard year. Maybe it's going to be a hard winter as well. Who knows?
That would be interesting. All right, Glenn, thanks a lot for this time. It was very interesting to talk with you. We're going to continue these on a regular basis. The idea of these live podcasts is to continue. We started this at the beginning of summer, actually on the Russian version of Facebook called Vkontakte. And the idea is to, yes, provide a nice outlet, a nice regular meeting with professionals, sharing our experience and everything, and having an alternative to longer conferences, things like that. It's on a weekly basis. So actually, I'm talking with Christopher next week.
Right.
Your colleague.
Well, Christopher's interviewed me a few times already as well. So he's quite an expert with podcasts. So I'm sure he's going to be fine.
Perfect.
All right. Well, thank you very much for inviting me, Antoine. I really appreciate it.
It was a pleasure.
Good luck with everything.
Good luck to you, and have a fantastic weekend with no teacher professional development, just a weekend.
Absolutely. Right. Thank you very much.